Over a decade ago, I was involved in a car accident. It was an accident, but it was my fault. The person that showed up after that accident was someone I didn't recognize. But as a result, you never really find out who you are because you're safe from the world. So you never end up living your true self. You never really discover your potential. You never find out who you are on the other side because fear has kept you safe. And I think I've been indoors and I was keeping myself safe, but I lost completely who I was.
The treasure you seek is in the cave you are afraid to enter. So I think, it's a signal that it matters. I should run towards it, not away from it.
They'll often label it fear of failure. And I would challenge them. Is it really failure you're fearful of? Or is it really the fact you're afraid that you now have to sustain the level that you've come to of actually being the person you're meant to be? And I think that's more terrifying. Something a little bit different today. Welcome back to the Mindful Paths podcast. My name is Nick Day, and I'm not with my co-host Carrie Kalimnios today because I'm doing something a little bit different. I was recently a guest on the Inner Game podcast, a wonderful podcast with a brilliant host called Michael Campion. Now, Michael is my speaking coach and honestly one of the most thoughtful interviewees I think I've ever had the pleasure to sit down with. The conversation did go somewhere I didn't really expect, and this being the Mindful Paths podcast, and the fact we recorded it on the 2-year anniversary of my dad passing, I thought it might be a good show to share again with you all today. So I talk about an accident that changed my life over a decade ago. I talk about my daughter. I talk about some concepts I've been working on, including Bravery, the fear tax, the fear equation. If you're new to the show, you may not be familiar, but I'm quite passionate about the concept of fear and how if we don't really lean into our fears, then that quiet compounding cost of every decision we make or that fear makes for you, they really do start to add up. So I wanted to kind of share pieces of my story on the Mindful Paths show, but this time a little bit different in terms of how it's come out. It's a part of a story I had never previously really told to anyone publicly, no one at all. So this will come as a surprise to those that listen to this show, but it'll also come as a surprise to those that I have known for an awful long time within my own sort of social communities. And I wanted to bring it to this audience, because you're the people who've walked this path with me. You were there when I lost my dad. You've been involved in a lot of my conversations with Harry during that time. And I'm hoping it might land for you. If it did, please let me know. I'd love to hear about it. You can find us at mindful_paths_podcast on Instagram. Anyway, I've probably said enough already. So here's the episode. I hope you enjoy.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Playing the Inner Game. I am delighted to introduce my friend Nick Day as guest on today's show. It's one of the privileges of my work that I get to coach some super interesting executives, CEOs, entrepreneurs, business owners, Olympic athletes, as you know. So full disclosure, Nick is a client of mine. We've been working on his executive public speaking coaching for some time now. And today I am wearing the hat of student and listener. I will no longer be coaching today. And Nick, aside from being a very successful business owner, he owns multiple recruitment businesses, multiple podcasts. He's a published author, regular keynote speaker, a real thought leader in the payroll and HR space. He is, which I find most interesting for me and what we're going to dig into today, he is a fear coach. And all of us are afraid of something in our lives. And what Nick has done is come up with a really unique proprietary framework for actually overcoming one's fears, which I find fascinating. And we've really clicked, we've really connected. There's been a bit of a bromance, I hope he doesn't mind me saying, over the past few months. And the deeper I dive into his work, the more interested I became. And I just want to share it with you because I think it could change lives. I think it could change people at a global level. But if, as I always said, it's so cliched, but it's true. If you can change one life, then your work has been worthwhile. And I truly believe Nick has something very special. So I'm excited to share his wisdom with you today. Nick, thank you for coming on the show.
I'm super excited to be here.
Me too, man.
Excited to be here. We are friends. It's been an emotional journey as well, right?
Yes.
And I'm really excited now to bring something to the masses, I guess. That's my aim. That's my objective here, that I think can really have an impact and help. It's helped me and those around me, but I want to have a bigger impact.
And you will. You absolutely will. Well, I think what be a good place to start and just dive in the deep end is, explaining how you arrived at this point in your life. What was the inflection point for you to turn inward and start to, it was clearly, you solved your own biggest problem first, right? What was your moment in your life, the inflection point where you discovered that there was something beneath fear that could be worked with, that could be played with, that could be adjusted?
Okay, so you've definitely gone in at the deep end.
Straight in.
I was gonna open with
No
a Chinese proverb that tells you how I got to this space. Maybe I'll give that anyway, and then give you the response. We don't know the questions. I don't know the questions you're going to ask. So okay, we'll go into the deep end. Well, the Chinese proverb. Let's start there. So, the Chinese proverb goes something along the lines of: if you want to be happy for an hour, sleep. If you want to be happy for a day, fish. Happy for a year, inherit $1 million or make a fortune. Happy for a lifetime, give back to others. You mentioned in your very kind and generous introduction that I've been an entrepreneur. We all know how to sleep. I do know how to fish. And I'm fortunate enough where the business has been quite successful. And I'm in that space now where I think I've owned an identity, which is payroll and HR influencer. Awards and things that go with that, which is great. But you get to a point where you think you're delivering a version of yourself that's having an impact, of course, in the space that I'm in, but it's no longer talking to me in the same way. And I've held a lot of myself back. And I guess there's a number of different realizations in this point, but being on stage, giving a keynote about payroll, which I'm passionate about, of course, but knowing I'm only giving half of myself because there's a story behind that none of my audience have ever seen or known. I've only shared on one other podcast in my life some of the things I'm sure we'll get into today. And the reason I haven't been sharing those stories is fear. Yeah. Fear of judgment, fear of embarrassment sometimes, fear of talking about something in a realm where I've created an identity in something else, fear of exposure, loads of different things. Where's that come from? Well, to go back into the deep end, which is what you asked in the original question. I've been through, as many people have, some traumatic things. I think when you get to a certain stage in your career, whatever you do in life, middle age maybe, it's very hard to get there without going through some level of torment and struggle. And this isn't about comparing struggle. Comparison's a thief of joy. It's understanding that we all have it. I love the idea of just be more kind because everyone is going through something. Funnily enough, we're recording today, and today, as you know, is the 2-year anniversary of my dad passing. My dad was my hero. And just saying those words without getting emotional is tricky for me. Sure. And then we can dive into how fear showed up in that instance as well, maybe a little bit later on. But over a decade ago, I was involved in a car accident. It was an accident, but it was my fault. And sadly, one of the results of that accident was someone died. And the person that showed up after that accident was someone I didn't recognize. What happened as a result is I hid from myself and I was telling myself one thing whilst knowing it was something else. So I was convincing myself and others that I was hiding in my house. I would say I'm someone who's very extroverted. I did a theatre degree, a theatre masters. Very outgoing, very sociable. I would borderline agoraphobic. I closed the curtains and didn't leave my house for some time, and I hid away from the world. And I told myself that was out of respect, being noble, being caring for those potentially impacted by it. And it's not to say those things weren't to a degree true, but when I really challenged myself, it was out of fear of judgment, fear of showing up in the world, fear of that being the impact that I was now going to have. And I think that started me on a self-help journey that I'd never appreciated before. I wasn't a qualified coach then as I am now. The self-help junkie that I became of trying to find some understanding, some reason, some purpose, I think is probably the word I'm looking for, amongst the rubble of what had happened. And I knew that I had to take action. And I realized that if I was this scared, it meant something to me. I think it was the first time I realized that fear is a signal that something matters. Yeah. There's something I call the fear paradox, which is if you're scared of something so much, then you make something true. So in this, let me use this in the context of, let's say, a bodyguard. So I would say after the accident, I was fearful of going outside. So a bodyguard will keep you safe from the streets. It'll keep you indoors. It'll keep you from anything bad happening. But as a result, you never really find out who you are because you're safe from the world. So you never end up living your true self. You never really discover your potential. You never find out who you are on the other side because fear has kept you safe. And I think I've been indoors and I was keeping myself safe but I lost completely who I was. And I didn't recognize it. I needed to take an action. And the action I took as it happened was I'd never done one before. I had to do something, and I signed up for my first Ironman event, which actually is a lot of solitude in that, sitting on a bike for 5 hours.
Could have chosen a team sport.
Yeah, exactly. But instead it got me outside. And I think that journey from hiding to being on the start line of, as it was, Ironman Zurich back in the time in 2012, was a kind of becoming for me. Certainly in terms of exploring what fear was and how it manifests and how it shows up in the world. That's probably where it started, which I think was your initial question. Yeah. Since then, I've been very cognizant of when it shows up again and cognizant of how I react to it and how others react to it. As a coach now, 99% of the clients I see are struggling with fear in one form or another. And we label it as something else. But it gets to the sum of its parts. Usually it's fear of showing up. And we convince ourselves, I think that's the key for me, we convince ourselves it's something else. I've said to you, I think fear's greatest disguise is wisdom. Wisdom, in my first example there, is, I'm being respectful. Yeah. It sounds so wise. Yeah. And fear tells us to be prudent, to play it safe, to play it small. Mm-hmm. And obviously since then, as you know my story, there's a number of other relatively traumatic and not so otherwise stories that I've gone through since then, as everybody does, because life is a challenge that has challenged me and my own theory and my own understanding of fear to go, okay, what's at play here? And how can I move the needle so that we can move through it? Because if I'm scared, the one thing I know is it means something. Yeah.
I always loved the concept of kind of fear being a signal or a compass. You probably love the Joseph Campbell quote as much as I do, right? The treasure you seek is in the cave you are afraid to enter. So I think, it's a signal that it matters. I should run towards it, not away from it. And there's a million things I could unpack there in what you described. But there's a couple of interesting things that are very easy, I think, for people to latch onto. Number one, you've obviously built up an identity in a different world, in the world of HR and payroll and recruitment, very successful there. You don't have to hate where you are to want something else, right? That's the thing a lot of people don't realize. It's like, it's okay to want something else. It's okay to want to explore these multitudes that everyone has. And ironically, the best person to coach others on, overcoming one's fears is the person who's had to deal with this battle again and again and again and again and overcome, right? And it's a little bit of a muscle that you build, right? It keeps showing up, right?
I think the one thing I identified is there's three things at play. So you talked about the proprietary framework. Yeah. When we work with clients and myself, what are the three things at play? And for many years, I thought it was two things. I thought when fear is anxiety plus uncertainty. Anxiety being the bodily response. How do I feel? That gut-punching feeling that gives us paralysis, the sweaty palms if you're about to go on talk and give a speech, whatever it might be. That for me, and people will have their own interpretation of what anxiety is, but that would be the biological response, whether that's the amygdala firing immediately to fight, flight, or freeze, or whether it's the prefrontal cortex catching up and having the conscious thought about how we approach something. I think that's where the first variable for me is anxiety. Yeah. So initially, the framework was anxiety plus uncertainty. Uncertainty is the unknown. How are people going to react when I step back outside again? How are they going to react when I step on foot on that stage and give a speech? Are they going to judge me? Are they not? The uncertainty we don't know. Mm-hmm. The thing that was missing that came later, and it came through another traumatic incident really, which was my daughter. She was diagnosed with a food eating disorder, and we can explore that if you wish to. But for me as a parent, when that happened, when the doctor turned around and said to me, Nick, did you know that food eating disorders of your daughter's kind kill more teenagers than cancer? My imagination took off. It took flight. And it hit me like a ton of bricks that the last part of the equation is the imagination. The truths that we tell, or the truths in inverted commas that we tell ourselves, the stories we tell ourselves. And that's the force multiplier. We tell ourselves stories all the time that may or may not play out, or more often than not, probably don't. We catastrophize. Yeah. Evolution will tell us that it's wise to be anxious. It saves us from the threats that are around us. But we now live in a world of abundance. It doesn't serve us in quite the same way. So if we can't control our imagination, then you let fear really take over. If you've got that anxiety at play, the bodily response, the uncertainty plus the imagination, for me, that's full-blown fear. But what's interesting is if you can adjust any one of those three variables, everything changes. I can be anxious without being fearful. Yeah. I can certainly be uncertain without being fearful. But I think if you have those three things, that's when fear really takes
really
hold.
kicks in. Yeah, and I love the way I love the time. I love it when anyone can deconstruct something that's vague and abstract, and amorphous, and actually break it down into something that I can play with, that I can adjust. Right, these are dials that I can turn up and down. And fear, it diminishes, it decreases at a distance, and that psychological distance that you can give it is, oh, okay, this thing isn't so big and scary anymore. So when you are doing these coaching sessions with people, where do you find, the most difficult part of that equation lives for most people? Are there recurring patterns that keep coming to you?
There are. I think
Yeah?
everyone's unique, but
Okay.
imagination is the force multiplier.
Yeah,
That's
okay.
the one we need to get
That's
hold
what-
of.
okay.
That's the thing where
Yeah.
there's a great quote by Sydney Banks that, every feeling lives in the shadow of a thought. What we're immediately thinking, and that tells us how we are now in the moment.
Yeah.
And if we can change that thought process, we can literally change the way we feel almost instantaneously. So I think that's probably the one that can have the biggest impact in the quickest way. But equally, by having three variables to the equation, it's easy to break things down to the sum of their parts. Yeah. Telling someone you can overcome fears and it'll be okay doesn't move the needle, right?
Yeah. Be less scared.
Be less worried. Yeah, right. So let's break it down and label something. Let's use public speaking. You're an expert.
Yeah, if you have a
speaking coach,
concrete
you work
example.
with me, right?
Perfect. Yeah.
I'm not scared about public speaking. Everything you Google will say it's one of the things that people are most fearful of. I would challenge that. I really would. And you may challenge me on this as a public speaking coach. We speak publicly every single day of our lives, right? The thing we're fearful of is the uncertainty about how the audience is going to react to us, potentially. We're anxious, our heart is pumping, we're nervous. That tells us that this matters. Like, I can go and give a speech about something that doesn't matter to me. I have no interest in. And I tell you, I don't have the butterflies. I don't care if they judge me because I have no vested interest in what I'm delivering a talk on. So for me personally, fear wouldn't exist in that moment. Right now, my heart's beating a little bit faster. Right? I know we're talking about some sensitive subjects. I'm probably speaking a little bit faster. I can feel the anxiety in my body as we talk. There's uncertainty about how this will land with people. I don't know. I can't control it. But I understand that it's not the podcast today I'm scared of. It's the judgment. So let's label it judgment. I'm fearful of the judgment. And then there's the imagination. In a public speaking context, the imagination is everyone's going to laugh at me. It's going to go viral of how bad my talk was, how I failed in a public environment. I may never get asked here again. This is my only shot. Equally, there's the success paradox where, let's say the speech goes really well. They're going to ask me to do it again. I don't think I can deliver this over and over again.
I think for me, the fear paradox is so interesting to me because when you first articulate it to me, I've had this intuition for so long, and I've tried to explain it on multiple podcasts to multiple people, but you'd actually arrived there before me. So if you could kind of double click on that fear paradox for me, because people aren't afraid of failure, they're afraid of success. Certain people, for me, I know that's the way I'm wired and built.
Sure. I mean, there's two elements to this. I think the fear paradox initially is around the thing you're fearful of will guarantee the thing you're fearful of. So, for example, if we're fearful of love, we're fearful of the rejection of love, we're fearful of going on dating apps because someone's going to be let down, we've had a bad relationship in the past, I'm not going to expose myself or put myself in a position where that can happen to me again. But by doing that, you're guaranteeing loneliness because you're letting fear, which sounds so wise, it's disguising itself as prudence or whatever it is in your life. I don't want to be put in that position where I'm let down again. Yeah. So I'm going to guarantee it by doing nothing. And yet the reason you want love is because you don't want to be lonely. Yeah. So you have to lean into it. There's a signal there telling you don't want to be lonely. And yes, it may not work out, but you know what? It's better to, when the final day comes and you're on that deathbed, and I reference this because my dad was there and I was by his side. Yeah. You don't want the regrets coming back to you of saying, I wish I put myself out there and found love. Yeah. And I hid away from it. And now I'm on my deathbed alone. If that's the example for you. The success paradox is slightly different certainly in a corporate world. That relates to imposter syndrome, which a lot of the clients that I deal with suffer from. Yeah. They arrive at a place in time and they don't necessarily feel like they belong. And they'll often label it fear of failure. And I would challenge them. Right. Is it really failure you're fearful of? Or is it really the fact you're afraid that you now have to sustain the level that you've come to of actually being the person you're meant to be? Yeah. And I think that's more terrifying. You've earned the right to be there. You've given an insight to the board and they love that insight. But now you wish you'd never given it because now they're going to ask for more. And I'm not sure I can repeat that, but you can. It's within you. I think the thing I'm really passionate around when it comes to fear is potential doesn't live necessarily just on the other side of it. It's already within us. Okay. It's about becoming who we already are if we're willing to face it. You're working with me at the moment to be a better public speaker. Wherever I end up, whatever level I get to, it was already within me. Yeah. Now you've unlocked it because I'm leaning into my fears. I'm leaning into where I can get better, but it was already within me. Correct. A lot of us hide away from what's within us in order to play it safe. But when the time comes at the end, I don't want to be there going, I could have done that. Yeah. And I didn't. And I played it small. You know what? Right now, I wish I hadn't lost so much of my time to that relationship because I was afraid of how they may have reacted, or I was afraid of not finding somebody else, or whatever that rings true for you. Yeah. Lean into it.
Yeah. No, it really sings to me because the singular thing I cannot bring myself to bear is to get to the end and look at myself in the mirror and say I didn't give it a shot when I wanted to give it a shot. And I did that with my own fear of public speaking at 16 years old and overcame it. But now it's as an entrepreneur and, I've changed careers more often and you're evolving into a new phase of your career as well. Can I sustain this level of excellence? That's the terrifying thing for me. It's not the fear of failure. It's can I sustain these high levels that I demand of myself and others will demand of me. That's far more terrifying.
I also think imperfect knowing is way better than perfect not knowing. Yeah. Right? So I want to do something. I don't want to be at the end going, I could have been this and I never gave it a shot. That's not a place that I personally want to be in. I told myself for years, I'm writing a book at the moment around fear. I was hoping to publish it in October. It's a shameful plug. But I told myself for years I can't write this book because I don't have a PhD. I felt that I needed more credentialing. Who's going to listen to this payroll HR speaker talk about something that isn't in my realm of genius or hasn't been known to be around fear? No one's going to read that thing. I need a PhD. That's fear telling me to wait. I think if you're listening to this and you've ever told yourself, now's not the right time, I need to wait, or I'm not good enough, that is fear trying to protect you. As I say, fear's greatest disguise is wisdom. It's telling you to wait, that you're not ready. But then if I'd listened to that forever, we get back to the deathbed scenario, I would still be an unpublished author. Yeah. I'd rather publish and it flop and know that I've given it my best shot than not publish at all.
The hardest thing I think for a lot of people is knowing what to do practically, right? Once they feel that anxiety, the butterflies come, the heart rate is racing, is there something practical that they can actually do to take control?
Yeah. I mean, I would say like anything, you can cultivate this over time. So if you're looking for an instant fix, there are some techniques we can do, and I can talk you through those in a moment. But I would say this is a daily lifetime practice of cultivating courage to do the things that mean something. So every time you feel fearful, I mean, I think fear is one of the most wonderful emotions in the world. And I want to be really clear. I don't believe in fearlessness. Yeah. We don't want to be fearless. We want fear because it signals something is important. Okay, so this matters to me. Now, how do I make that into something? So that takes courage over time. And we cultivate that in the smaller moments. Do the smaller things that scare you now. Make the phone call you've been putting off. Those little acts can make a difference. Again, don't be at the end going, I could have made that phone call and apologized. If they don't accept your apology, you've done your bit. But pick up the phone and do the things. Send the email, start the conversation, do the smaller things. And you'll be amazed that over time, it becomes more natural to you. And you'll have this with your clients, I'm sure. The more times they speak on stage, the more confident they become, right? So there's a little bit of that in there. In terms of a practical framework, there is one I've labeled bold, which starts with the breath, which is so important. There's something called the physiological sigh, which is 2 deep inhales through the nose, which is, and a really long exhale through the mouth. The idea of that, and it's been backed by research, is that it's the quickest way to calm your parasympathetic, or to engage your parasympathetic.
And anyone who's familiar with breathwork, Huberman Lab, etc., will recognize that
not
physiological sigh, or not necessarily?
No, not necessarily. I think the most people will be familiar with breathwork, box breathing, which is I mean, there's loads of techniques you can do, but in terms of research,
the one,
yes, yeah, 2 quick inhales through the nose, 1 long exhale through the mouth, and you can do that very quickly. People don't even know you're doing it. You're about to get on stage, calm the nervous system. Your amygdala's in full flow. It's sending hormones and cortisol through your body and adrenaline through your body. Just take a moment, and that's a nice way just to help calm the system a little bit. The O is for observe, right? So what is it you're afraid of, right? What's the situation that's in front of me? Because actually thinking and labeling something is very different. We'll get to the L in a minute, which I've probably given a little bit away there, but observe what's in front of you. So I'm about to go on stage. I'm about to deliver a talk to all of these people who, they're here to be, they're on my side.
Yeah.
This
is what I always tell people.
Yeah.
They're there. They want the best of you. Yeah. They're not there to waiting for you to fail and mess up. They're there to learn. They want to be entertained, but you can deliver that. You can if you've done the work.
Well, that's the second point of the observe bit, really, is where are we in the process, right? I've done the homework. I've done what needs to be done. And even if you haven't, even if you're fully, completely underprepared, you're there for a reason. So just observe it. Sometimes we go flying into things without having that moment of clarity, without taking that breath to, rather than just be concentrating on the breathing with your eyes closed. What's the next action I need to take? No, where am I? Yeah. The L is for label. There's a lot of research around cognitive reframing, right up to the special forces. When you're going into the heat of battle, you've got to cognitively be able to reframe your situation. It's not about whether I'm going to get killed in this moment. It's about the purpose behind the mission, potentially, or whatever it is for you. So label it, and labeling things out loud has a huge impact on the uncertainty variable in particular. Remove the uncertainty with the labeling. And there's lots of science that backs that up as well. And the most important thing is D, which is for do. All right, there's loads of frameworks out there that take you to that point, but they don't make you take the action. And start small. I said, pick up the phone, take one first step out. For me, the first step was stepping outside. Couch to 5K, right? Start with a walk. Whatever it is you want to do, whatever you're fearful of, you can't get anywhere unless you take an action. Put yourself on the dating site, have the difficult conversation. Whatever that means for you, I would challenge anyone listening to this. Everyone has some action they can take now that can move them closer to the signal that's telling them that they're afraid.
Yeah. The observation and labeling part in the BOLD framework, I think, requires a certain level of introspection and reflection that won't come naturally to a lot of people, right? Because the ability to observe in the moment, the true fear I have is fear of being judged, right? As opposed to I'm just terrified of stepping on stage. I think it is a bit of a leap for people. Is there something they can do to develop that muscle? Is there something you did personally to develop that muscle in the observation and labeling part? Because I think that actually requires a certain level of mental dexterity that takes training.
I think it does.
Which is why you're there, obviously, as coach.
For sure, it does take training. I think something we'll do in a coaching practice, which is a well-known coaching technique. Well, there's two actually. One is to catastrophize.
Okay.
So
deliberately catastrophize. Okay.
Yeah, because then you can bring yourself back from it. So I go on stage and I completely flop. Again, I'll go back to better to have tried and failed than to not tried at all. All right. So you can always come back from failure, right? So for failure you can heal from, but regret lingers forever. Yeah. The idea of not going on, that regret will take you all the way to the end, right? So let's catastrophize this. I'm going to get on stage. I'm going to completely flop. I'm going to say something I shouldn't have done. I'm going to forget my lines. You'll cope. It'll be okay. But let's say that does happen. So what's your next action? Well, next action, I'm going to prepare better. My next action is I'm going to speak to the organizers. There's a process you can follow and you'll be okay. So I think sometimes it's catastrophizing can be very powerful, because it breaks down some of the parts of what you're really afraid of. If you use the public speaking example, I'm fearful of the judgment. Okay, well, you're going to get judged. Not everyone's going to like you. What happens if 99% of the audience hate what you've got to say? What does that mean for you? How would that change your next approach? Are you on the right stage at all? Does this sit with your virtues and your values? If they're misaligned with your virtues and values, maybe you shouldn't even be on that stage anyway. Maybe you're born to be on to speaking, but to a different audience, right? But catastrophize it and work out what your next action would be already. Because when you catastrophize it, it brings you back it centers you to go, actually, it's unlikely the worst case is going to happen. But even if it does, I'm prepared for it.
I'll survive and I'll be okay.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. So even if you go to the special forces example, they will take certain precautions, whether that's letters home, whether that's preparing their family for the worst. They take steps to reduce the anxiety, to reduce the uncertainty of what happens next. If you don't tell your partner, where all your financial records live and how to survive if I'm not here, you're going to go into a battle with that anxiety at the back of your mind, that uncertainty, and the imagination of how will they cope. So there are three things you can immediately take off the table. It doesn't guarantee that I'm going to survive the fight. Yeah. But, I've reduced some of those, I've dialed those down a little bit. Yeah. I think the second technique is another coaching technique, which is sometimes you might need some help with this. But if you've got a partner at home, a friend, it's called the 5 whys. Why do you want to go on stage? Well, because I want to be known. But why?
Why do you want to be known?
Yeah. Why is that important? And go 5 layers.
Yeah.
And you'll find the fifth
It's
layer
such
is
good
when you
practice.
get to the real truth.
Yeah.
And then if you know why it matters to you, funnily enough, the uncertainty can sometimes dissipate, because you know what? They may not like what I've got to say, but it's really important to me at my core that I say it.
Yeah. Yeah. Is that for you the most important thing right now? I think for me, getting to know each other, it feels like for me, if you don't share this framework with the world, if you don't help another person overcome whatever challenges they have, some part of you will always be incomplete.
For me now,
right?
Sure. I mean, it took I'll go back to my daughter's situation probably for this to hit home harder.
So how many years ago was this?
She was 13, so nearly 4 years ago, where I realized that I can help somebody else, and I had to get permission. Well, funny enough, I had to get permission, but I probably would have done it anyway, is the truth, because if I can impact one parent who's went through something similar, who can recognize the signs a little bit earlier, then I don't mind if 99.9% judge me for it. That one parent can make the difference for me. And that's probably when I made the decision to take this a little bit more public. So there was a moment, there were many moments when I hid behind my work and my laptop, the identity of CEO and entrepreneur, to stop me from facing what was in front of me, which was the potential loss of my daughter if we didn't get this right. Yeah. And I had to change my identity pretty quick. Trying to get calories into a daughter with a food eating disorder is traumatic, to say the least. If anyone's gone through it, they'll understand. And it's not like you need ordinary amounts of calories. You need in excess of huge amounts of calories. And the one thing they don't want is that. And they've got a voice inside them that's telling them all kinds of different things.
And what's the voice and the fear inside her head? People who have these eating disorders.
I think it's different for everybody. It's definitely in our instance, a mental health situation, right? Where sometimes you feel like your love isn't always enough. And that's hard. We took a family-based therapy approach, followed by someone called Eva Musby. There was an approach that we tried to follow, but there was a moment when we live in Devon. She ran into the sea at Budley Salterton unexpectedly, and she had no intention of coming back. I've never been more terrified. You'd think I'm a good swimmer because of Ironman and stuff. Like, I've never been trained to take someone out of the water, and it was a stormy day, and I had this moment of fear where I didn't think I was going to get to her. And it was, I was probably one of the most terrifying moments of my life. Yeah. I'm fortunate I did. And we got her out. And it was like, all the other stuff didn't matter. Yeah. The entrepreneur me didn't matter. The payroll didn't matter. She didn't need her dad, the entrepreneur. She just needed her dad. And it was like, okay, how have I responded to the fear? Right now, all of these things are firing in all different directions. She means more than anything to me. There's the clearest signal. And also that there's huge opportunity and positivity to come out of even traumatic incidents. That we're very fortunate that we managed to help her get back to health. And she's thriving now, I should say, to reassure anyone that's listening. And now she's this passionate individual who wants to help others in similar situations. She's passionate about conservationism and sustainability and being a good human being. She learned some lessons early, right? Yeah. The bond we have now is closer than it probably ever was before. Mm-hmm. And it's sometimes, you don't want everyone to go through that story to find that outcome. Sure. But it would have been very easy for me to hide behind what I would call busy bravery. Hide behind emails, hide behind distraction, not face what was most terrifying in front of me. Forcing someone to eat food when every core of their being tells you they don't want it, and having to sit with them and just show love.
Well, I think that the busy bravery thing is something that probably a lot of people listening, successful businessmen and women listening to, will understand the temptation to jump into one's work and hide from the thing that we really need to do, which in your situation would just be a dad, would just be there for her, right? And luckily for you and your wife and daughter and son, of course, you managed to make it work, you managed to make it through. But as I always say, you don't get to choose the tools that shape you. And had you not gone through that experience as a family, you wouldn't be as tightly knit as you are now. And you would never, in the menu of life, want these things to be given to you. But as I say, you don't get to choose the tools that shape you.
Equally, we often teach the things we most need to learn, right? And the interesting thing about how we can get better at dealing with fear is that doesn't mean because I have a framework that I don't get fearful myself. I fell into the same trappings with my dad. We're talking about it today. It's 2-year anniversary. He was given 3 to 6 months to live when he got a stage 4 cancer diagnosis. And busy bravery showed up again. Even though I've created a framework and I've coined a term, there was me hiding behind emails rather than make the phone call to him to ask him how he was doing, because I was terrified to hear the response, right? So intuitively, you're doing it. I need to make that phone call. It's hard for me. I'm putting myself first, really. It's hard for me to hear his voice and to know that he's struggling. So I'll distract myself. And it sounds courageous. It sounds courageous to say to him, Dad, I'm working on the business and you're so proud of me. And, I hid behind that again. And I think that I was fortunate because I've been immersing myself in this world of fear and understanding and psychology, really, that I was able to identify that trait in me earlier to try and do an adjustment. And actually, I did adjust for it. And my wife helped me with that. She's like, Nick, you're hiding behind distraction here. Your dad needs you.
Yeah. But it's how quick you recognize it and bounce back.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And you get quicker and you get, I'm very reflective on whether fear is showing up and disguising itself as something else now. Funnily enough, I identified it today. And I don't know if you recall, but we shared an exchange today on a talk that I'm writing. And you said to me that it was too much going on, too many stories. Strip it down to some of its parts. And when I stripped it back, I realized that I'd been hiding it. The stories were there to hide the audience and myself from just focusing on the difficult stories. That was fear disguising itself for me of going, let's play it safe here. That people I convinced myself that people aren't ready for it. I'm not ready for it.
Would you mind sharing me with the audience, what that core emotional truth was? What was because with your speech, and many people recognize it, you're trying to land too many planes at the same time.
Yeah.
And there was one thing that brought closure and resolution, and it emerged in the speech now, but you were afraid to bring it out, rightfully so, before.
Yeah, so it's going to be difficult for me to talk about it. I mean, I've worked with you for some time and you've said, Nick, I've never heard this part of your story.
Never.
And I shared it with you today. Because, there's a resolution to the accident story. So I had counselling and had different things, and I found the outdoors and did the races. Many months later, I went to a recycling centre, a car park. Bear with me, I'll tell you what happened. A car pulled alongside of me and a woman got out. She said, Nick, do you know who I am? And I was frozen by fear. I'm going to get emotional, but to hold myself here. Yeah. So she was the stepdaughter of the individual that lost their life. But what she said to me was, of all places at the tip in St. Albans, unexpected. Don't let this impact 2 lives. It was an accident. Now, if we bring this into the framework, and I don't mean to suddenly shift, maybe I do, maybe this is my fear talking here. I'd been living in a space of imagination and uncertainty and anxiety around how she was. Yeah. She's an adult, she had her own children. So at an age, but the image in my head that had been on repeat for months and months and months was a woman in a fetal position in an empty room, no windows, rocking for her stepfather. And I couldn't shake it. No matter how many times people would say to me, Nick, that, that won't be how she's feeling. That's the image I went to sleep with.
But then you see her and that's not the reality.
Correct. Yeah. Which is a great example of where the stories we tell ourselves are very rarely true. And actually it gave me the building blocks to go, okay. Doesn't change what happened. Doesn't change any of those things, but it gave me the tools, the mindset, I don't know, the understanding of the fear equation in its rawest form, really, to realize the stories I've been telling myself wasn't true.
And thank you for sharing, because I know how difficult it is. But for me, the loop was always slightly open with you and the framework and the story, and it had to be closed. And when you told me that story of, I was involved in an accident, someone died, I was responsible. And years later, I meet the stepdaughter at a tip of all places, a recycling center. Talk about contrast principle for storytelling. Sure. She pulls up beside you, purely, 100% serendipity, and says, don't let it ruin your life too. I mean, talk about coming full circle and solving the equation, right? Everything you've been working on by yourself in isolation, she is the person that makes that message land, I think. So thank you for being brave enough to share.
Oh, no, I mean, yeah, it's the first time I've shared that publicly to ever. I want to bring it back if you don't mind.
Yeah.
And this isn't to divert. This is genuine because I think it's important for people with my dad's situation. So when we got the diagnosis for 6 months, 3 to 6 months, and I hid initially under distraction, and my wife said, you know, you're hiding behind this. Your dad needs you.
I do it too.
Your dad needs you now more than ever. Like, I know you're scared to confront the truth of losing your hero as he is to me. You got to speak to him. But actually, when I was able to overcome what I was, the busy bravery element of it, and go, okay, I'm going to confront this. You know, there is uncertainty about when he's going to go. There is definitely anxiety about that. You know, every chemical hormone in my body is firing off because of what the emotions are firing on all cylinders. And the imagination of being without him is terrifying. But actually, my dad meant everything to me. So that signal was, well, what can we do? Although there was inevitability because it was stage 4, we were still able to take action. And we were able to improve his diet, get him the treatment he needed, put him in a better headspace, all those things. And he lived for 2 years after that diagnosis.
It's amazing, isn't it?
And time is one of the most precious things we have. And I'm truly thankful and grateful for every story, every conversation we were able to have because I didn't hide behind a busy brave. I'm not saying that all of the reasons he lived longer was because of me and the things we changed. But collectively, people helping him and leaning into the fears that hopefully added time. It's not always about understanding how the story will end. It's not having the regret that we didn't do anything.
Yes.
All right. And fear teaches us to stay small. A lot of people in relationships playing it small, scared to offend, upset, be alone. But you end, you know, I guess it's going back to the fear paradox. It's the one thing you guarantee.
Yeah. And I think it's hard to quantify the lost opportunities, right? That in a parallel universe, had I been more brave, had I overcome my fears, my life would look like this. That's quite hard to actually quantify. But you've had an attempt at this, right? In terms of what it costs us.
I have, and I label it the fear tax. The act of inaction costs you, and it compounds. So I think, like any tax, right? This is a tax which you don't get any rebate from. I work in the world of payroll, which is where this was born from, to be honest.
Okay.
I gave a talk on the payroll stage and it hit me like a ton of bricks that this is what we pay. Like, where are you paying fear tax in your life? Where are you paying the tax where fear is ruling your life so much that it's costing you every single time you accept it? This is the same that links to the idea of imposter syndrome or sustainability. It links to everything, really. The potential's within us. Like, become who you were always meant to be. But to do that, you've got to stop paying the fear tax. And it compounds. Every time you play it, it compounds. And, you know, you might do something in your 30s. You're still paying it in your 50s if you haven't addressed it.
Yeah.
And for me, it's been revelationary in my own life and my family's life, where we look at things, okay, how are we paying the fear tax in this moment? Like, we don't want to be sat here. I'll go again, failure can be overcome, but regret lingers. Yeah. I don't want any regrets on my deathbed. I don't want any ghosts coming to visit me about the things I haven't achieved, the things I haven't done. I want to know that I've given my best shot, that I've been kind, courteous, respectful. I've tried to have a positive impact on all those things. I don't want a book visiting me because I didn't do it. You know, I don't want a relationship coming back to me and going, I could have been something else. Like, the fear tax is I think, a really powerful way to understand that inaction is an act. Yeah.
Every non-decision you make really compounds and it adds up. Yeah. And I think I can see that in my own life. Less so presently, but certainly before. And again, I'm not perfect, but got better. I think this is an application that almost everyone listening will be able to relate to in some shape or form, whether it's their career, whether it's their love life, their own family, entrepreneurship. It applies everywhere, absolutely everywhere, right?
But you can audit this. I mean, you can look back. I'm a coach, so I would prefer to look forward than look back.
We can run an
but
audit.
We can audit. We can audit the decisions we didn't make, the where it's cost us in the past, the conversations we never had, the gambles we never took. And usually when you think in those terms, it comes with an element of regret. You know, I'm fortunate enough that I launched a business and it's been quite successful. But I launched it in 2008, just before Lehman Brothers went under. And I was terrified. I took investment and then launched under restrictive covenant at a time when no one was hiring. I had to back myself because it was in me to go and do that thing. It was so much of my core that I had to see and test myself. I can't wait for timing. Fear was telling me it's not the right time, right? It was telling me, wait. That's the fear disguising itself again, right? The reason I'm fearful is because I really want this to happen. I've got to lean into this and launch my business. And yeah, it was testing. But I'm really glad I'm not sat here now going, I could have launched a business.
I could have launched it.
But I didn't.
Unless anyone listening or watching thinks that your business has been a straight line success since the beginning. Well, I don't know if you're able to disclose, but yeah, certainly you've had the rug pulled from under you from people who you loved and trusted. And yeah, so again, you have to take the leap, and you've had to rebuild it again.
Sure, yeah.
Right?
I mean, life's here to test us, right?
Yeah,
it's
totally.
I would say that the meaning of life for me is finding joy in the struggle every single day. We don't know what's around the corner. If going right back to how we started the conversation, that accident happened in less than a second. I was half a mile from home, and I was en route to pick up my daughter to go and see the night garden. That's where my head was at the moment, right? And then next thing you know, your life has turned upside down, and we don't know what's around the corner. We think we do. We plan these things as if it's always. Our mind works in a way that we plan for the Disney story, the happy ending, right? But and we mentioned this off air a little while ago. Every Disney story has struggle before it. We forget it. We focus on the ending, and we forget the witches, the poisons, the deaths, the infidelity, whatever it is before. We have to walk that path first, and then if you do that with intention and you do that with fear, understanding where fear is guiding us. I'd like to think when you'll get to that happy ending earlier.
Yeah. And I love that the Disney movie analogy, because I think a lot of people will look at their own life and think, maybe woe is me, but maybe you're just halfway through the movie.
Oh, yes, the infinite game.
This
right?
is it, right? You're at the dip. This is just push through, right? Good times are ahead. You might just be a little bit early, right? If you hang in there, right, and take some action. So yeah, we only remember the recency bias, right? We remember the happy ending. We don't remember the struggle, the tension, the Bambi's mum dying, right? We don't remember all that stuff.
Yeah.
So I'd love to move into kind of some more general questions that I ask on playing the inner game, because it's a nice common thread that ties everything together. Again, we haven't scripted these. I never do. What's the most memorable thing anyone has ever said to you?
This is actually an easy one, and it does link to what we've discussed.
Okay.
I have a bit of a man crush on Bear Grylls. Okay. There are reasons for this. When I was at my worst, I guess, when I abandoned myself and I was agoraphobic, my wife gave me a book called Mud, Sweat and Tears by Bear Grylls. I was already a fan. I'd watched everything he'd ever done.
Already a fanboy.
Yeah. And I read that book, and it was the escapism I needed, and the helped me sort of move towards opening the curtains, getting outside. Now, I used to race, and this will make sense in a moment. I used to do obstacle course racing, internationally represented by country, been all over the world doing obstacle course racing. And Bear Grylls decided to launch his own race called the Survival Race. And I was fortunate enough to be part of his pilot program because I was doing a lot of racing and relatively well known in that space. So I did a pilot race, consultative race for him, and I got to meet him. And he was the first person I told about the accident outside of my family.
He was the first person?
The first person. He was there, and I grabbed him at the end and said, Bear, your book has changed my life. This is what happened. You're the first person I've ever disclosed it to. And his words to me were, Nick, and this is going back to your question, this is my answer. Life is not about waiting for the storms to pass. It's about learning to dance in the rain. I don't believe it's his quote, but he gave it to me at a time when I needed to hear those words. And I've taken that with me ever since.
Beautiful, isn't it? Even if it's not his, it's poetic, and it hit you at exactly the right time, right? And one of my favorite quotes, again, not mine, is the greatest gift we can give is kind words spontaneously tendered. Right? And so you just needed it right then, and he gave it.
And he didn't judge me. Of course, my imagination already, well, go back to the fear equation, not to push it.
He's a big famous guy, and I'm telling him this for the first time.
He could have judged me and said, I need to know exactly what, he didn't. He took it on board without judgment. Incredible. And gave me something that he will never know the impact that had on me, but had a huge impact.
And maybe a listen one day.
Maybe.
What are you most grateful for?
It's a great question.
Not an easy one.
It's not an easy one. And I do practice gratitude or thankfulness. I don't keep a
Why do
gratitude.
you make that distinction?
Because I think they're different. My distinction would be when we're trying to be grateful, we sometimes try and force the issue. And we try and look at, you end up saying the same things every day. And I found it easier for me to keep a record of the things I'm thankful for than grateful. Maybe it's my own personal distinction, right? But I have a diary of the stories of the day rather than at the end of the day saying, I'm really grateful for X, Y, and Z. I just pick out the moment of the day when I look back, it'll resonate with me. And it's from a book called Storytelling that he's actually a comic, and he said that's how he finds all his comedy, but I used it for a different purpose. It's interesting when you keep a day diary like that and you don't fill in the day, you look back and go, what did I do that day? It's almost like a day of your life's been erased because you can't look back and go, what was the story of the day? So you can get quite fixated on it. But going back to your question, what am I most grateful for? The health and support of my family. The health, the love, the joy, the beauty that my family have for one another. When you strip everything back, and my eulogy, I'm not going to be known for being a payroll influencer, right? Or a podcaster or any of those things. We're known at the end for the love we gave to the world, the love we received in the world, how we looked after other people, how we showed care. For me, I'm grateful that I have the love and support of my family. I'm very grateful for having the opportunity to reciprocate that love back. It might sound selfish, but I think that's important. And that's it, probably.
Great answer. In the words of Charlie Munger, I have nothing to add. That was very good. Next question. If you could distill kind of this may be very easy for you, it might be very hard. If you can distill your life philosophy to one principle, what is the one principle, one core value running through everything that you do across payroll, across your fear coaching, across your life as a family man, across sport? If you could distill it to one principle or core value, what would it be?
I might give a two-pronged approach to this.
Sure.
I think ultimately it's be more kind because having gone through a journey where I was terrified of judgment and all those things, and I felt like I needed kindness in the world, actually it was always there for me, but I had to go and put myself out there to discover it. And I think now I was living a world, and this happened before I even turned 30, I'm mid-40s now, but I thought I was indestructible and I could live life and party and all these things. And I hadn't had any depth really. I thought you kind of think you have depth and then you realize something happens and it shifts your world upside down. And it never occurred to me before that happened to be aware enough that behind the scenes of your friends, your family, your colleagues, there's probably a lot going on. And sometimes when someone says that thing or cuts you up on the road, you almost write your car off and the first thing you do is you effing this, that or the other. I like to retell the story and go, let's be more kind. Maybe that individual is rushing to the hospital because they've got a sick one. Nothing means anything but the meaning we give it, right? So I like to try and add meaning in a way that's more positive and starts with kindness. So maybe that is the best place to put it rather than give a two-pronged answer. Maybe it's just be more kind. I mean, the second point I was going to say is become who you are. And this links back to the fear piece. We know intuitively who we're meant to be. I have a calling inside me now to follow this path, and I don't know where it's going to end. Maybe it'll end on deaf ears and go nowhere. I don't mind. I believe this is, in this moment in my life, what I'm meant to do, and I feel that intuitively. It drives me from within, and I think we don't lean into what drives us enough. We block it out because because fear talks, we're not good enough. It's not the right time. No one will listen to me. That's all. And it's funny, the name of your podcast is The Inner Game. They're all external influences.
Yes.
What I'm doing now comes from somewhere much deeper. And I'm okay with that. And I'll never know who I really am unless I pursue that journey.
Amen. I've got a quote you'll love if you haven't heard it already. Procrastination is how you preserve the fantasy of your potential.
Oh, no, I don't know that. It's nice though.
Yeah, because I always thought and recognized in myself when I procrastinate, it's fear that I'm not good enough, that it won't work, that it will fall on deaf ears.
Sounds so wise.
It sounds so wise, doesn't it? Just protect yourself. But I can always preserve the fantasy of my potential if I never launch the thing, if I never make the call. So amen to following that. Last question. Choosing from my Rolodex. I would be disappointed if ... Complete the sentence. I would be disappointed if...
You know, it's probably a follow-on from the response I gave before. If I didn't listen to my inner calling and give this all the gusto it needs, if it can impact one person, whether it's my daughter's story, whether it's the accident, whether it's my dad, whether it's that difficult conversation, whether it's helping one person get out of a relationship that's keeping them small, and that relationship doesn't have to be with a partner, it could be with an employer, right? Whatever it is, I'm happy. I feel like I need to do that, and that's it. I'd be disappointed if I didn't listen to what's in me, and it would be easy. It'd be really easy not to expose myself with these stories. Be really easy to hide away from that judgment. That's the easy route, and all it's telling me is this matters. That's fear screaming at me not to do this, screaming at me not to be on this show, screaming at me not to disclose the difficult truths. And not everyone's gonna like me, love me, be in tune with what I've got to say, and that's fine.
You're going to help a lot of people, my friend. You're going to help a lot of people.
That would be my regret.
Yeah. And on a final note, I would love for you to share kind of the final words, because it's 2 years since your dad passed away, the final words that he said to you, because they were so uplifting and so positive. It was the complete opposite.
Yes, the emotion comes back in. So there's a sadness from him here as well. He literally turned on his side. It was on a bed that I knew he would never leave again. Right, he was at the final stage, and he basically said to me, "Keep opening new doors." Or he called me Nicky. He was the only person that called me. He said, "Nicky," that's what he called me. "Keep opening new doors." And he said the only regret he really had. To be fair, he was an inspiration because he was on his deathbed, knowing the inevitable's literally hours away, and he had no regrets, bar one, which he said to me. Oh, yeah. And my family were present. They'd never get to read the book they knew I wanted to write, which got me to write it, because at that point I hadn't committed to writing. I'd still convinced I needed to do a PhD and all the other things. And actually that's the first thing I did, is lean into that and go, right, I don't need that credential to get this on the page. And that's
No, you don't need a PhD. Awesome. And you're going to do it. And we're launching it in September or October. The book's coming.
October launch date.
Yeah. And I think that it's a beautiful place to end, because so many people watching and listening, myself included, know that they have a book inside them and they won't write it. They won't release it. They won't put it out. So please follow Nick's example. Keep opening new doors. Write the book you know is inside you.
And in homage to Bear Grylls, the working title, but it may change depending on what the publisher wants. His book, of course, was Mud, Sweat and Tears for obstacle racing. My book is Blood, Sweat and Fears. From anxiety to action.
I love that. So good. Nick, absolute pleasure, mate. We're going to raise a glass of whiskey to your dad after this. But where can everyone find you on social media, on various platforms? What's the best places?
LinkedIn for sure. I mean, at the moment, you're probably going to see more of a payroll HR identity to me. You might see that shift. I've got other social channels to launch, but LinkedIn for sure. Definitely the best place.
Wonderful. Yeah. Okay. And it's just Nick Day, is it? Or Nick J?
Yeah, it's just Nick Day.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Nick, thank you so much for coming on Playing the Inner Game. Let's go have a toast to your old man.
Looking forward to it. Thanks, Michael.
Cheers, mate.
So that was my conversation with Michael Campion on Playing the Inner Game. As you can probably tell, it was a bit of an emotional episode for me. If there was something in there that hit home, the fear tax, the busy bravery principle, the part about my dad, you know what? I'd recommend just sitting with it for a moment. Sit with it before you scroll to the next thing. That's what the courage window is really about. And it's the courage window in real time to do that, just to sit with your own fears, your own contemplations, have a think about what you'd like to take away from your life and where maybe fear is disguising itself as wisdom for you right now. You don't need to solve it today. You just need to name it. It's the first part of moving through fear. As always, I want to thank you, our audience, for being here on Mindful Pass. I hope you might feel this is an episode that you feel is worth sharing with one person in your life. If it is, please do that. I really want to have an impact on the world for the positive. And as you can probably tell from my story, that hasn't always been the case. So I hope that's how my fear theory can grow and how we can have a better impact on the world through this show and through other interviews and more as well. So thank you for your support, and I look forward to seeing you next time. I'll be back with my usual co-host, Harry Kalimnios. Until then, stay mindful, and I look forward to being with you again real soon. Cheers.